The crowd at Carson's Crossing was rowdy that morning, dust rising from boots, whiskey breath thick in the air. No one batted an eye at the wooden stage in the town square, a place that once held political rallies. Now it auctioned human souls. "Next!" the man barked, slapping his palm against the post. A woman stepped forward. Dirty white dress, torn sleeves, hair the color of dusk, tangled like she'd run from something far worse than this. Caleb Thorne stood at the edge of the crowd, hat low over his eyes. A bounty hunter turned rancher with scars on his face and more on his soul. He didn't come to buy a bride. He came to forget. "Mail order girl from Missouri," the announcer boomed. "No family, no debt, no name she'll tell." The woman didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there, barefoot on splintered wood. $50, someone yelled. 75, 100. Caleb's voice cut through the noise, calm, cold. The auctioneer squinted. "You sure, stranger?" Caleb nodded once. The gavel came down like thunder. "Sold!" The woman didn't flinch. She looked up, right into Caleb's eyes, and for a second he felt the strange chill of something ancient. Like this wasn't a woman at all. Like this was judgment in a white dress. He took her by the arm, gently. "What's your name?" She didn't answer. "You belong to me now," he muttered. That's when she whispered, for the first and only time that day. "No man owns me." And with that, she stepped off the platform and walked toward his horse, like she'd just agreed to a war she planned on winning. The trail stretched for miles, sun low over the horizon, painting the sky in blood and gold. Caleb rode ahead, silent as ever, reins loose in his gloved hands. The woman rode behind him on a mule he'd borrowed from the sheriff, stiff-backed, stubborn like her. She hadn't spoken a word since the auction, but Caleb could feel her presence like a weight. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't grateful. She was watching. They reached the creek before sundown. Caleb dismounted and offered her his canteen. She didn't take it. Just looked at it like it might explode. "You gotta drink sometime," he muttered. Still nothing. He sat by the water, pulled out some jerky and split it. She took the piece, finally. No thanks, no glance. Just took it like she was starving, and too proud to show it. "What's your name?" he asked again. No answer. "You run from something?" he tried. Her eyes flicked toward him. A slow blink. Then she tore a bite off the jerky and chewed like it was leather. "You keep quiet like this, folks'll think you're deaf." Still nothing. He sighed, leaned back on one elbow. "Name's Caleb Thorne. I don't hurt women. I don't chain. I just needed help on the ranch, the auction. I didn't plan that. I saw you up there and you looked like..." She suddenly stood. "I looked like what?" Her voice was sharp, low, southern. Caleb sat up straighter. "You looked like you didn't belong there. Like you were waiting for someone to stop it." She crossed her arms. "I wasn't waiting, I was daring." "Daring what?" "Any man to think he could own me and live." The words hung in the air like a rattler's hiss. Caleb didn't flinch. "I don't own you." She walked slowly toward him, just close enough that the firelight caught her eyes. Hazel, fierce, wounded. "Good," she said. "Then don't try." That night, they camped beneath a crooked pine. She took the bedroll far from his. Caleb didn't argue. He laid back, stared at the stars, and wondered who she really was. No name, no past. Just fire in her blood and danger in her silence. He knew one thing already. This woman would either break his life open or burn it to the ground. The ranch sat in a valley that barely clung to spring, wildflowers pushing up between the bones of drought and forgotten cattle trails. As they rode in, a hawk circled above, shrieking like a bad omen. Caleb dismounted first, tying his horse to the post. She waited, looking at the house. Not like it was home, but like it was a trap. Her eyes scanned every shutter, every shadow. "It's not much," Caleb said, wiping dust from his brow, "but it's mine. And now I guess it's yours too, if you want it. She slid off the mule without a word. He opened the door for her. She didn't walk in. Something wrong? He asked. She looked at the floorboards, the creaking roof, the single cot in the corner. No, she said. Just looks like a place where men drink and forget what they've done. Caleb tilted his head. And women? They survive. She walked in finally, hands by her side, but Caleb noticed they were clenched into fists. He showed her the kitchen, the well pump, out back, the small field where he grew corn, or tried to. The sky hadn't been kind last season. Won't be easy, he admitted. But I pay fair. You help me run this place. You'll have your own room, meals, and no one lays a hand on you. She gave him a long stare. So you're not looking for a wife? Caleb chuckled bitterly. I was once, before the war. She married my brother instead. I ain't looked back since. For the first time, her expression softened. Just a flicker. Later that evening, as Caleb worked in the barn, he noticed her inside the house, by the fireplace. She wasn't resting. She was burning something. He rushed in. What are you doing? She turned. Flames licked the corners of a yellowed paper in her hand. What is that? He demanded. She let it go into the fire. A letter, she said calmly. Whose letter? Mine. From a man who paid to own me. Promised me land, jewels, a house, near the coast. He lied. Caleb's stomach sank. So you were promised to someone else. I was promised freedom, she said. And I'm still chasing it. That night, the wind howled through the cracks in the walls. Caleb didn't sleep. She'd burned her past in his fireplace. And he had no idea what kind of future she was about to bring through his front door. The sun hadn't even cleared the canyon when the sound of hooves cracked through the morning stillness. Caleb looked up from the chicken coop, hay still clinging to his sleeves. The rider wasn't local, the kind of man you didn't mistake twice. His coat was dust black, long as a preacher's sins, and the lower half of his face bore the pink and purple mark of an old burn. His left eye was cloudy, dead. The right one was full of questions. Caleb stepped out, hand near his holster, not on it. Can I help you? He asked. The stranger dismounted, slow, controlled. Looking for a woman. Caleb's heart thudded. What kind of woman? He asked. She's not yours to keep, the man said. Red hair, eyes like broken glass. Name's Eliza, or so she tells folks. Inside, Eliza, if that was her real name, had gone still. She pressed her back to the wall, breath shallow. She didn't peek through the window. She didn't need to. She knew that voice. She knew it like she knew the scent of blood in the mud, like she knew nightmares. Caleb didn't answer right away. Ain't seen anyone like that, he lied. The stranger stepped forward. You sure? I got gold, a man's life worth of it, enough to make you forget what you saw. She ain't here, Caleb said, voice sharp now. The burned man studied him, then nodded, slow. All right, but if she shows up, tell her Elijah says hi. He got back on his horse, tipped his hat, and rode off like death riding east. When Caleb walked back inside, she was gone. He searched the house and nothing. Then out by the woodshed, he found her crouched low, shotgun pointed at the trees. He knows I'm here, she whispered. Who is he? Elijah Kane, she said. He bought me once before the auction. I ran, burned half his house to get out. Caleb didn't flinch. You gonna tell me what you did? He asked. She lowered the gun. I stabbed him with a fireplace poker and left him for dead. You think he wants revenge? No, she said. He wants to finish what he started. Caleb's voice hardened. That ain't gonna happen. Not while you're under my roof. She looked up at him, disbelief in her eyes. You'd protect me? Even now? He nodded. I don't care what you did to survive, but I do care what he plans to do next. That night, Eliza slept with a knife under her pillow. Caleb sat outside on the porch, rifle across his lap. Out in the dark, a coyote howled. But the real predator already knew where to find them. And he wasn't howling. He was waiting. The next day came painted in copper clouds and a heat that clung to your skin like guilt. Caleb hadn't slept. Not really. Just dozed in between the groans of the porch wood and the distant cries of coyotes. But Eliza, she didn't sleep at all. Her knife never left her palm. She stepped outside just after dawn, boots silent on the worn floorboards. Caleb watched her from the rocker. "He'll come back," she said. "Then we'll be ready," he answered, though even he didn't believe it. Caleb wasn't a gunslinger. Not anymore. He'd done enough killing in the war to last 3 lifetimes. But when he looked into her eyes, cold fire and unspoken pain, he knew he'd raise that rifle again if it came to it. By noon, they were both on edge. He took her out to the shooting range behind the barn, a few empty bottles on fence posts, and a scarecrow half-rotted from last fall's frost. "Ever shot one of these?" he asked, holding out a lever-action Winchester. Eliza stared at it like a ghost from a past she wasn't ready to bury. "Once," she said. "Didn't aim. Just pulled the trigger and ran." "Well, now's the time to aim." She lifted the rifle, stiff arms trembling. Caleb adjusted her stance. Gentle, respectful. "You're not fragile," he said, "but you've been cracked." "Cracks let light in," she whispered. She fired, missed, then again. A bottle shattered. Behind her, Caleb smiled. Later that afternoon, they worked in silence. She chopped wood, he repaired the coop fencing. 2 strangers bound by threat and survival, neither calling the other friend, but neither walking away either. But the quiet broke at sunset. First came the eye, smell, burned leather and oil, then the sound, a single whistle carried on wind. Caleb froze. He knew that whistle, from war. "Eliza, get inside." She ran without asking why. From the trees, a bullet flew, splintered the coop post inches from Caleb's head. He dropped, rolled behind a trough, and fired back. The shot rang across the canyon like thunder. Another bullet, this time from the side, ripped through the barn wall. "They're flanking!" he shouted. From inside the cabin, Eliza had taken position at the window. She didn't freeze, didn't scream. She aimed at a shadow moving through the brush and pulled the trigger. The man fell. Caleb looked at her, stunned. "You ever lie?" "About shooting before?" She didn't answer. By nightfall, they'd counted 2 bodies, both strangers, not Elijah, which meant Elijah was still out there, watching, waiting. Caleb knelt beside one of the corpses, checking for clues, branded into. The man's wrist was a crude E-scar. "Elijah's mark," Caleb muttered. Eliza stood beside him, hair tousled, cheeks smudged with ash and sweat. "I told you," she said. "He doesn't come alone. He brings hell with him." The fire from the shootout had died down, but the smoke still hung in the air like an omen. Caleb stood over the branded corpse, his jaw tight, eyes stormy. Eliza watched from a few feet away, arms folded tightly across her chest as if trying to hold something broken inside from spilling out. "You recognize that mark," she said. He didn't deny it. "Elijah used to ride with a raider crew up near Tucson. Called themselves the Serpents of Cain. Real bastards. Branded all their members with that E after their first kill." She swallowed hard. "That was him. Their leader." Caleb's eyes snapped to hers. "You were married to that?" Eliza looked away. "I wasn't married, Caleb. I was sold." The words hung there like a noose, swinging in the breeze. "I was 16. My uncle owed money to a gambler. Paid the debt with me. Elijah bought me like a mule at a trade post, said I'd learn to obey or learn to bleed." Caleb felt his stomach turn. "What did you do?" "I waited," she said, her voice steel under silk. "Waited 6 years. The night he killed my dog just for barking at him, I took his knife while he slept and I ran. Been running since." A silence settled between them, heavier than any bullet. Caleb reached into the dead man's coat pocket. His fingers brushed paper. He pulled out a torn envelope, blood-stained, addressed to Elijah Kane. Inside was a crude, hand-drawn map and a note. "She's hiding near Mesa Ridge. Her name's Eliza now. Make her pay." He handed it to her. Eliza read it, and her lips trembled. Not in fear, in rage. "Someone sold me out," she said. "Someone I trusted." "You recognize the handwriting?" She shook her head. "But I know where the map leads. That cabin's been scouted for weeks." Suddenly, hoofbeats echoed in the distance. One rider, fast, intentional. Caleb raised his rifle, motioned Eliza inside, but when the rider came into view, he wasn't a threat. A young boy, maybe 12. Dust-covered, cheeks streaked with tears. "Please, help! My mama! She's been shot! Men came to our ranch looking for a woman named Eliza." Eliza's face went pale. "They're spreading out," Caleb said. "Looking for you in every direction." She stepped forward. "Take me to her." "Like hell I will," Caleb snapped. "You don't know what they'll do." "I know exactly what they'll do," she said. "That's why I'm not running anymore." Her spine was straight, her hands steady. Something had shifted. She wasn't just a mail-order bride anymore. She was a hunted woman turned fighter. Caleb stared at her, and for the first time, he didn't see a victim. He saw a survivor. The sun had barely begun to set when Caleb and Eliza galloped after the boy. His name was Noah, barely 12, skin raw with sunburn, eyes filled with a kind of fear children shouldn't know. "My ma tried to hide me under the floorboards," Noah said between gasps. "But one of the men kicked her down. She was bleeding from her side when I ran." Caleb's jaw clenched. Eliza rode with her hand gripping the saddle horn, eyes scanning the horizon like a hawk tracking prey. She wasn't running anymore. No more hiding. No more letting fear dictate her life. When they reached the boys' ranch, smoke still rose from the barn. The front door was half torn off. Blood stained the steps. Caleb rushed inside, rifle raised. Eliza followed close, heart pounding in her ears. On a straw bed near the hearth, Noah's mother lay gasping, a gunshot wound in her ribs, blood soaking through her dress. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of boots. "Are you Eliza?" she whispered hoarsely. Eliza knelt beside her. "Yes, ma'am," they said. "If I didn't give you up, they'd hang my boy." Her hand reached up, trembling, and gripped Eliza's sleeve. "I didn't tell them, I swear. But one of them, he was different. Said he wasn't after revenge, said you had something that belonged to him." Eliza's breath hitched. "What did he look like?" "Tall, gray in the beard, green eyes, cold eyes." Caleb stiffened. "That ain't Elijah. That's his older brother, Ezekiel Kane." Eliza looked to Caleb. "I thought Ezekiel died in the war." "He did," Caleb said, voice grim. "Or so we thought. Ezekiel was the true leader of the serpents. Elijah was just his blade. If Zeke is back, then this ain't just about punishing you. It's about claiming something he thinks is his." The dying woman grabbed Eliza's wrist tighter. "They'll burn every home between here and Black Hollow to find you." "You must run." "I won't," Eliza whispered. Caleb leaned close. "We have to get her to Doc Rudd in Rust Creek. She won't survive a day without stitching." The boy stood by the door, fists clenched. "I want to help." Caleb gave him a hard look, then nodded. "Get water, clean cloth. You listen, do not cry, do not panic." As the boy ran, Eliza touched the woman's face. "What's your name?" "Rebecca," she said faintly. "Tell Noah. Tell him his mother never stopped fighting." Tears burned Eliza's eyes. "You'll tell him yourself." But deep down, she knew Rebecca wouldn't live to see another sunset unless they moved fast. As Caleb and Eliza lifted her onto a wagon, something caught Eliza's eye near the ashes of the barn. A scorched piece of parchment was nailed into the beam. She pulled it loose. It read, To the girl who ran, we are reclaiming what is ours. No man, no badge, no God will stop us. We'll take it all back, beginning with your blood. E.C. her. Fingers crumpled the paper, fire in her veins. Caleb saw her face. We need to know. What is it you have that they want so bad? Eliza turned to him, voice low. It's not what I have. It's who I am. The wind howled as the wagon rolled through the open plains toward Rust Creek. The sky above was gray, clouds hanging low like judgment. Rebecca's breathing was shallow, and every bump on the trail made her moan. Eliza sat beside her, pressing, clean cloth to the wound, blood soaking her hands. But her mind wasn't on the cloth, it was on Ezekiel Kane. Caleb, she said quietly, what do you know about Ezekiel? Caleb kept his eyes on the trail. Enough to lose sleep. He was the devil behind the serpent's mask, a preacher's voice with a butcher's hands. Why is he after me? Caleb slowed the horse, pulling to a stop beside an old fence. He turned to her, jaw set. Because you're not who you say you are. Eliza, there's a bounty on your name in 3 territories, but none of them are for being a mail-order bride. Eliza stared at him. I checked once, Caleb continued. Back when I was suspicious of you, I had to. You came from nowhere, but I didn't say anything 'cause what I found didn't make sense. What did you find? She whispered. Caleb leaned in, voice low. You were listed as Eliza Moore in Wyoming, a widow, but in Kansas, same face, you were Anna Lee, a runaway accused of burning down a banker's estate. And in Missouri, you were registered under the name Eden Kane. Her face went pale. Kane, he repeated. Same last name as Ezekiel, same bloodline. She didn't answer. He leaned back. That's why they want you, ain't it? You're not just running from them. You belonged to them. Eliza looked down at her bloodied hands. Not anymore. But her silence said it all. The truth was heavier than the iron shackles she'd once worn. I was born Eden Kane, she said finally. Elijah and Ezekiel were my cousins. I was raised in their commune, what they called God's reach. But it wasn't God they followed. It was Ezekiel's madness. He made us believe we were chosen to reclaim the West, by fire and fear. Caleb stared, stunned. At 16, I ran, she said, eyes glistening. I faked my death in a fire, took new names, tried to bury the past. But they found you again, he said quietly. She nodded. That auction? That wasn't random. They planted me there, hoping to draw me out. Rebecca groaned beside her. Caleb jumped down to fetch more water. Eliza wiped the woman's brow and whispered, Hold on, please. Suddenly, a rider appeared in the distance, galloping fast. Not a bounty hunter, not Ezekiel. A man in a worn brown coat with a silver badge, glinting on his chest. Caleb squinted. Sheriff Lane? The rider pulled up fast, dust flying. His face was grim. Eliza Moore? He asked. Yes? You need to come with me. Now. Caleb stepped forward. She ain't going anywhere. Sheriff Lane looked at them both. Rust Creek's burning. The serpent struck. We lost 5 men. Ezekiel left a message. Bring Eden Kane, or the whole town dies by dawn. Eliza's stomach dropped. The past wasn't chasing her anymore. It had caught up. Rust Creek was never silent, but that night, it was. The wind had gone still. The usual clatter of saloon doors and distant horses, gone. Even the dogs refused to bark. Eliza stood on the porch of the sheriff's office, eyes locked, on the horizon where black smoke twisted into the clouds like a vengeful spirit. They burned the livery, Sheriff Lane said. Then the general store. 4 homes gone. They're not taking hostages, just leaving messages. One at a time. Caleb clenched his fists. And what's the message now? Lane looked at Eliza. Turn her in, or everyone dies. Eliza's voice was calm, but hollow. This is my fault. They're here for me. Rebecca, still weak and wrapped in a blanket, whispered from the cot inside, "You saved me. Don't let them burn this town." The townsfolk had gathered in front of the church, farmers, widows, shopkeepers, each one afraid, each one watching her. A few muttered behind hands. Others stared openly. "She brought this," someone hissed. "We don't even know her real name," said another. Caleb raised his voice. "She saved lives. She fought them off before, remember? She's not the enemy here." But the fear was stronger than reason. Eliza stepped forward, wind blowing her hair back like a veil of black silk. "I'll go to him," she said. "Alone." "No," Caleb barked. "I have to." Sheriff Lane looked torn. "We don't negotiate with murderers." "But they're not here to negotiate," she replied. "They're here to finish what they started 10 years ago." Suddenly, a young boy ran into the square, face bloody, clothes torn. "They've taken the McAllisters," he shouted. "They're hanging people by the crossroads." Gasps. Caleb turned to Eliza, rage in his eyes. "We end this. Tonight." Eliza looked toward the fading sun. "There's a place in the canyon," she said. "That's where he'll be. That's where they always went for final rites. They call it the Hollow Chapel." Sheriff Lane nodded. "Then we ride." But before they could saddle up, an old man stepped from the crowd, gray beard, cloudy eyes, and a Bible in his hands. "She's not what you think," he said. "I knew her father, knew the Kane family before they lost their minds. She's not a monster. She's the one who ran from them," people murmured. Eliza stepped toward him. "You knew my father?" He nodded. "He tried to burn down the chapel to stop the rituals, died for it. You carry his blood, yes, but also his courage." New silence settled. Not fearful, reverent. Then slowly, one by one, the townsfolk began stepping forward. One woman handed Eliza a rifle. A man offered a horse. Another gave her a silver cross on a chain. "We fight," someone said. Eliza looked around at these people, these strangers who had every reason to turn her away. But they didn't. She mounted the horse, Caleb beside her, Sheriff Lane tightening his saddle. From the distance, the sound of a church bell rang. Slow, solemn, unnatural. It wasn't Rust Creek's bell. It was his. Ezekiel was waiting. They reached the Hollow Chapel just past midnight. Nestled between jagged cliffs and dead pine trees, the ruin looked less like a house of God and more like the place where prayers went to die. Moonlight poured through its broken steeple, casting crooked shadows across the rocky ground. Eliza dismounted slowly, every step echoing memories she'd buried deep. She could almost hear the chanting, like ghostly whispers still trapped in the stone. Caleb stepped beside her. "You sure about this?" "No," she whispered. "But it ends tonight." Inside, candles flickered in strange iron sconces. Symbols carved into the altar, twisted versions of scripture, seemed to bleed in the dim light. And there he stood. Ezekiel, Kane, older now. His once black hair streaked with white, eyes sunken, yet burning with unnatural fire. And beside him, Rebecca, bound and gagged, bruises on her cheek. "You've come home, daughter," he said softly. "As it was written." "I'm not your daughter," Eliza hissed. "Oh, but you are." He stepped forward, slow, methodical. "Born of my blood, shaped by fire, chosen to carry the flame. These people turned their backs on truth, but you can lead them back." "I came to stop you," she said, "to end all this." Ezekiel smiled, calm, terrifying. "You think I didn't want this? Every sacrifice I've made was to summon the hour of return, and it begins with you." Suddenly, from the shadows, 4 men stepped forward, hooded, armed, eyes glowing with some vile conviction. Caleb raised his rifle. Sheriff Lane moved beside him. "We've got your house surrounded, Ezekiel. It's over." Ezekiel laughed. A deep, unholy sound. "You brought the law to a holy place? Then let your blood water the altar." He snapped his fingers. A shot rang out. Rebecca screamed, but Eliza was faster. She lunged forward, tackling the nearest cultist. Gunfire exploded in the chapel. Candles fell. The altar cracked. Smoke and screams filled the air. Caleb dragged Rebecca to cover, untying her hands. "Stay down!" Eliza rolled to her feet, gun aimed directly at her father. He didn't flinch. "Doe, it," he dared. Her hands trembled. "You're not me," Ezekiel said softly. "You never were, but you can be. All you have to do is kneel." She fired. The shot echoed through the canyon like thunder. Ezekiel stumbled back, a look of betrayal frozen on his face. He reached for the altar, blood soaking his robe, then collapsed, whispering, "You could have ruled." Eliza dropped the gun, breathing hard. Sheriff Lane checked Ezekiel's pulse. "He's gone." Outside, the rest of the cult scattered. The town had come. Rifles, torches, horses. Rust Creek had fought back, but inside the chapel everything went silent until the entire structure began to creak. The foundation groaned. "It's collapsing!" Caleb yelled. "Out, now!" They ran. Dust and fire chased them as the chapel crumbled behind them. By dawn, nothing remained but blackened stones and smoke curling toward the sky. Eliza stared at the ruins, eyes wet. "It's finally over." Caleb took her hand. "No, it's finally begun." By morning, Rust Creek had turned from silent town to stirring legend. Smoke curled from the remains of the chapel like a ghost refusing to leave. Blackened stones steamed under the rising sun. The air still carried the burnt scent of old prayers and broken curses. Eliza sat on the porch of the sheriff's office, wrapped in Caleb's coat, staring into nothing. Her eyes were dry now. Too dry. When you've lost your childhood twice, tears become a luxury. Rebecca sat beside her, bruised, but safe. She hadn't said a word since the rescue. Not because she didn't want to, but because silence was the only thing she still trusted. Sheriff Lane approached slowly, tipping his hat. "We're still clearing the canyon. Found 5 more bodies down by the river, all marked with Ezekiel's seal." Eliza barely nodded. "He was building an army." Lane sighed. Whatever he was building, it died with him. But Eliza wasn't sure. Some things don't die. They wait. Later that day, the townsfolk gathered outside the saloon. They wanted answers, and they wanted to see her. The woman who stood against a ghost from their past. Caleb stood beside her, hand gently resting on the small of her back. He didn't push her forward, just stood with her, steady as the land beneath their feet. She took a breath, walked up the old wooden steps, and spoke. "I was born here," she began, her voice rough but strong. "Not in this town, but in this soil, in the fear that lived behind every locked door, in the guilt everyone swallowed instead of speaking." Heads turned, whispers rose. "My father, Ezekiel Kane, was a monster, but he wasn't the only one. You knew. All of you. You saw things, heard things, and you looked away." Silence. A sharp, guilty silence. "I came back to break that silence, and I won't be owned by it. Not by his name, not by what he did, and not by what you didn't do." A woman in the crowd began to cry. A man removed his hat. Another bowed his head. Eliza looked toward the chapel's remains, then back to them. The past doesn't own us unless we let it. She stepped down, and for the first time in Rust Creek, the crowd parted for her. Not out of fear. Out of respect. That night, Caleb walked her out past the fields, to a patch of wildflowers blooming from ash. "I buried your mother here," he said. "After your father took her. This land refused to stay dead." Eliza knelt, brushed her fingers over the petals. "She deserved better." "You both did," Caleb whispered. They stood in silence as wind rustled through the wild blooms. A second chance was beginning to take root, one fragile petal at a time. It was just past midnight when Rebecca slipped the folded parchment into Eliza's hands. "I found this," the girl whispered. Beneath the chapel floorboard, it had her name. Eliza stared at the paper, aged and brittle, the corners eaten by time. The name scrawled across it made her breath catch in her throat. For Eliza, when she is old enough to know her mother's handwriting. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it by candlelight in Caleb's cabin. He stood by quietly, knowing some ghosts had to be faced alone. The ink had faded, but the words burned bright. My sweet Eliza, if you are reading this, then the truth has reached you, or at least enough of it to question everything. I want you to know I did not choose Ezekiel. I was sold to him, promised a better life. What I found was terror dressed as holiness. But in the silence, I found something stronger than fear. I found you. You were the only thing he could never control. The light in a house filled with shadows. I hid money in the root cellar. And more than that, I hid hope. If you ever find this, use both to run, not just from the past, but toward the life you were always meant to live. Forgive me for not escaping with you. I paid with my life to protect yours. Eliza's heart clenched. Her mother hadn't abandoned her. She had fought for her. Tears finally fell, slow and sacred. Caleb knelt beside her, his hand warm on hers. She was brave, he said gently. She was everything I want to be, Eliza whispered. The next morning, Eliza returned to the chapel ruins, her boots crunching over the ashes. She dug with her, bare hands until they bled, until she found the hidden root cellar. Inside, a rusted tin box. Inside that, a stack of worn bills, a silver locket with a tiny photo of Eliza as a baby, and a ring. Her mother's ring. And one more thing. A deed. Her mother had bought land outside Rust Creek. Fertile land. Land that Ezekiel never knew about. She stared at it, stunned. She planned a future. Caleb stepped forward, dusting off the edges. A place to start over. Eliza looked up, her voice firm. Then let's build it, not in her shadow, but in her honor. And for the first time since she arrived, Eliza didn't feel like someone's daughter or someone's bride. She felt like her own name. The wind carried dust and unease that morning in Rust Creek. Eliza had just finished painting the door of her new cottage, small, made with reclaimed timber from the old church, but it was hers. Hers and Caleb's, a place not built from fear, but from freedom. Then came the hoofbeats, heavy, measured, not like a rancher or a rider passing through. Caleb stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. His eyes narrowed at the figure dismounting, outside the saloon. The stranger wore a black duster, brim low over his brow. He walked with the kind of confidence that made grown men get quiet and dogs back away. He pinned a flyer to the saloon post. Eliza's face was on it. Runaway bride. 500 reward. Property of Ezekiel Crane. The room went dead silent. Even old man Grady, who never looked up from his whiskey, muttered, "Trouble." Caleb yanked it off the post before Eliza could see. But it was too late. She had stepped onto the boardwalk, eyes locked on the paper, her lips parted. "That's me." The stranger turned. "You must be Eliza Crane." "I'm not," she snapped, voice trembling. "Not anymore." He grinned, but it was the kind of smile that held no joy. "I ain't here for a chat, sweetheart. Just need you to come back quietly. Your husband's got powerful friends." "She's not going anywhere," Caleb growled, stepping between them. The man didn't even blink. "Then it won't be quiet." He turned and left, but the message was clear. Eliza looked at Caleb, heart racing. "He won't stop." "No," Caleb agreed, "but neither will we." That night, Eliza packed what little she had. They couldn't wait. But as she opened the locket, her mother left her one more time. Something new caught her eye. Behind the photo was another note. A name. A location. and one line scribbled hastily. "If he ever finds you, go here. Trust no one, not even the law." Eliza's fingers tightened around the locket. She turned to Caleb. "We're not just running, Caleb. We're going to find out who Ezekiel really is." He nodded, loading his rifle. "Then let's finish what your mama started." They rode out before dawn, fog still hanging like ghosts over the fields. Caleb led the way, rifle strapped tight, eyes sharp. Eliza rode behind him, locket clutched to her chest like it was a map to freedom. Because maybe it was. The name inside it, Jonas Bell, Whistler's Ridge, meant nothing to Caleb, but it struck something deep in Eliza. Her mother had once whispered that name when she thought Eliza was asleep. And now, as the threat of Ezekiel loomed closer, that whisper sounded like a lifeline. They stopped to water the horses by a creek 2 hours north. "Whistler's Ridge is outlaw country," Caleb said. "No lawmen go there. You sure this is the way?" Eliza nodded, her voice steady. "If Mama said trust no one, not even the law, this is exactly where we need to go." The land grew rougher, rockier. Pines replaced plains. At one point, Caleb spotted riders tracking them from a distance. 3 men in tan coats, Ezekiel's scouts. They didn't engage, not yet, but their presence was a promise. By sundown, they reached the base of Whistler's Ridge. A forgotten cabin leaned against the edge of a steep bluff. Caleb signaled Eliza to stay back as he approached, gun drawn. Before he could knock, the door creaked open. An old man stood there, beard silver, one eye milky, but the other eye sharp as broken glass. "You're 2 days late," he said. Caleb froze. "You know who we are?" The man stepped aside. "I know who she is." Inside, the cabin was lined with old Union maps, stacks of letters, coded notes, and a rusted rifle that had seen war. Jonas Bell, once a scout during the war between states, poured them coffee like he'd been expecting them a lifetime. "Your mama, Eliza Mabel Holt, was the bravest woman I ever met," he said, voice hoarse with memory. "When she fled Ezekiel, she gave me everything he was hiding, secrets he killed men to bury." Eliza leaned forward, heart pounding. "What kind of secrets?" Jonas handed her a bundle wrapped in oilskin. Inside were papers and photographs. Ezekiel Crane, not just as a cruel husband, not just as a rich rancher, but as a man shaking hands with Union generals, bribing judges, and standing over mining lands soaked in blood. "He doesn't just buy women," Jonas whispered. "He buries towns to steal what's underneath." Then crack! A gunshot shattered the back window. Caleb threw Eliza to the floor. "They found us," Jonas growled. And outside, torches lit the mountain. They weren't alone anymore. The torches moved like fireflies in the night, dozens of them winding through the pines, closing in. Jonas yanked a heavy wood plank over the front door and bolted it shut. "Cellar!" he barked. "It ain't deep, but it'll hold for a bit." Caleb shook his head. "We're not hiding, not with what we have." Eliza gripped the bundle of documents, heart hammering. "This proves everything. If we die tonight, Ezekiel wins." Jonas handed Caleb a crate of bullets. "Then we hold the line." The cabin creaked with age, its walls never meant for war. But in that moment, it became a fortress. Jonas stationed himself at the rear window, Caleb near the front, and Eliza crouched low by the hearth, feeding pages of Ezekiel's corruption into a leather pouch strapped to her side. "They'll try to burn us out," Jonas warned. "They always do." Outside, a voice shouted through the trees, "Give us the girl and the papers, and we'll let the rest of you crawl away." Caleb stepped forward, rifle cocked, voice cold. "Come take her." A gunshot cracked through the silence, then another. Wood splintered near the window. Caleb returned fire, dropping one torchbearer where he stood. Jonas chuckled low. Still got the hand for it. But they were outnumbered. Badly. Eliza crawled to the back room, searching. "There has to be another way out." "Root cellar, under the trapdoor," Jonas called. but it opens to the east side, right where they're watching. A brick beside the hearth shifted under her palm. Click. She pushed, and a narrow crawl space opened behind the firewood stack. Dust choked her, but light shimmered at the end of it. A way out. "Eliza!" Caleb called. "We can't hold much longer." "We don't have to," she cried. "Follow me!" They scrambled into the crawl space one by one, Jonas grumbling. About his back, Caleb covering the exit until the last second. They emerged 100 feet behind the cabin, hidden by the trees and smoke curling from the roof. The attackers hadn't noticed, yet, but the moment they reached the horses, Eliza stopped cold. A lone rider waited at the tree line, black hat, black gloves, and eyes like burnt coal. Ezekiel Crane. "You think I wouldn't come for what's mine?" he growled. Caleb stepped in front of Eliza, rifle raised. Ezekiel smirked. "Shoot me, and my men gut that cabin and everyone in it." "There's no one left in it," Eliza said, voice hard as flint. "And you don't own me anymore." She held out the pouch of papers. "But you do have something to lose." Ezekiel's smile faltered. "The governor," Eliza said. "The judges. The land grabs. I'll hand this to every newspaper west of the Mississippi." A gun cocked behind her. "Jonas, I say we finish it here." Ezekiel's eyes darted between them, calculating. His men were closing in, but slowly now, watching, hesitating. "I built everything you see," he hissed. "You think they'll tear it down for some girl's word?" "No," Eliza said. "But for your handwriting? For your photo with dead miners at Red Hollow? Yeah, I think they will." He lunged, and Caleb fired. Ezekiel fell, clutching his side, but not dead. Not yet. "Let's ride," Caleb growled. They mounted and vanished into the trees, leaving behind a burning cabin, a wounded monster, and a war yet to come. But for the first time, they had a chance to win it. They rode through the night, hooves pounding like war drums, smoke trailing behind from the burning cabin. The moon lit the path, but danger lingered in every shadow. Jonas groaned in the saddle behind Caleb. "Bullet still in my leg. I ain't gonna make it far." "You will," Caleb muttered. "You have to." Eliza rode beside them, clutching the pouch like it was sacred. The documents inside held the power to end Ezekiel Crane, and she wasn't about to let them slip through her fingers. By dawn, they reached the edge of Claywater, a town still clinging to silence and fear. Caleb looked at Eliza. "They won't believe it unless they see it for themselves." "They will," she said, "because I'll show them." They dismounted outside the printing press. Old Man Harris, the town's printer, stepped out, blinking, in surprise. "Eliza Holt," he rasped. "Ain't seen you since the wedding. Help me print 1,000 copies, she said, handing him the pouch. This town's been living in his shadow long enough. Inside, the press creaked to life. As ink met paper, names became headlines, photos turned into evidence, and Ezekiel's empire began to crumble. But Claywater wasn't ready to cheer yet. Not until the sheriff saw it himself. Sheriff Grant stood outside his office, hand resting on his holster. "Eliza," he said, eyes wary, "you're walking trouble these days." She handed him the first paper off the press. His brows furrowed. Then his face paled. "That can't be real." "It is," Eliza said. "Signed by Judge Calloway. Witnessed by General Maddox. Everything Ezekiel ever buried. It's all here." The sheriff looked up slowly. "You realize what happens now?" Eliza nodded. "The town has to choose silence or justice." That night, the saloon filled with murmurs. Farmers, widows, ranch hands, folks who'd lost land, family, hope. And then Eliza walked in. She stood on the stage once used for card, tricks and whiskey songs, but tonight it was a courtroom. "Eliza Holt," someone muttered. "No," she said, "not Holt, not Crane, just Eliza." She told them everything, about the auction, the cabin, the papers, the crawl space, about a life bought and a soul stolen, and about how she took it all back. When she finished, the silence was heavy, until an old miner stood up. "He took my land," he said. "Buried my brother in Red Hollow." A woman followed. "He bought my daughter's silence. She was 12. The dam broke. Voices rose. Voices. Rage turned to courage. The sheriff walked in just as the town began to roar. "I've issued a warrant," he said. "Ezekiel's not sheriff anymore. He's a fugitive." The next morning, wanted posters replaced his nameplate, but Eliza wasn't. Done. She walked to the chapel and lit a candle for her mother. "You were right," she whispered. "Truth don't come easy, but it's worth every mile." And as she stepped outside into the sunlight, people turned to look, not as a bride, not as a victim, but as the woman who broke the chains. Red Hollow had once been a mining town, abandoned now, swallowed by dust and regret. But today, it waited. For reckoning, Ezekiel Crane was already there. He stood atop the ridge, surrounded by the last of his men, mercenaries bought with gold and blood. His face was stone, but his eyes darted, calculating. "They think they've won," he muttered. Below, Eliza rode into the hollow, flanked by Caleb and a dozen townsfolk now unafraid to be seen. Sheriff Grant followed behind, rifle slung across his chest, star shining in the morning light. Jonas, wounded but unbroken, remained in the wagon, clutching a rifle like it was part of his bones. Eliza dismounted slowly. "I'm not here for vengeance," she called out, voice carrying through the canyon. "I'm here for truth," Ezekiel laughed. "You always were dramatic, girl. You think these people care about truth? They care about power." "You're wrong," Eliza said. "They just needed someone to remind them how to stand." He drew his pistol. "Then let's see if they die standing." But he wasn't fast enough. Caleb's shot cracked through the air. One of Ezekiel's men dropped. Chaos exploded. Gunfire echoed across the rocks. Sheriff Grant ducked behind a rusted ore cart, returning fire with the calm of a man who'd seen war. Caleb moved like a shadow, covering Eliza as bullets splintered. Wood and stone. Eliza crawled behind a fallen beam, clutching the folder still filled with the last of the documents. Even now, truth had to be protected. Ezekiel's men were trained, ruthless, but they weren't fighting for anything real. The townsfolk were. One by one, Ezekiel's mercenaries fell, until only he remained, blood on his hands, rage in his eyes. He turned, trying to run. But Jonas was waiting, rifle raised. "You buried my brother," Jonas said. "Now I bury your lies." The shot rang out. Ezekiel collapsed, dust rising around him like a curtain closing. It was over. But no one cheered. The hollow went silent, the kind that follows thunder. Eliza walked to Ezekiel's body. She knelt, not in grief, but in finality. She placed the locket on his chest. "Not owned," she whispered. "Never again." That evening, back in Claywater, the bell tolled once for the fallen and twice for the free. Sheriff Grant burned the auction ledgers in the town square. The people watched, quiet, unified. Caleb stood beside Eliza. "What now?" "We rebuild," she said. "Not just the town, the truth." "And you?" he asked. She looked at him, soft but fierce. "I was bought, I was broken, but now I belong only to myself." The wind was calm that morning. No blood, no gunfire, just sunrise painting the town golden. Eliza stood at the edge of the town square, where the old auction stage had once cast shadows over women bought like cattle. It had been burned to ash. Last night, and where it stood, a new platform was rising, this one built for speeches, not chains. The people of Claywater gathered, men who once turned blind eyes, women who whispered behind closed curtains, children who had seen too much, and they all looked to her. Sheriff Grant stepped forward. "We owe our peace to many, but mostly to one woman who walked into this town with no name, no rights, and changed everything." He turned to her. "Miss Eliza, the floor is yours." She took a deep breath. Not because she was afraid, but because she finally had the right to speak. I was sold, she began. I was branded as property, but I never belonged to any man. I belonged to a dream. A dream my mother whispered through tears. A dream my father died for in silence. A dream that said women are not for sale. That freedom doesn't wear a price tag. She looked out at the crowd. You all saw what Ezekiel did. You all let it happen. Eyes dropped. Guilt spread like a wave. But now you've seen what standing up looks like too, she added. And it's not too late. We build again. Together. She reached into her pocket and held up a small brass key. This belonged to my mother. She told me to find where it fit, and now I know. It was never for a door. It was for this moment, to unlock something in all of us. There were tears, not loud ones, the quiet kind, the ones that cleanse. Later, that day, Caleb found her behind the chapel, hammering the last nail into a simple sign. It read, Claywater Women's Shelter. Founded by Eliza Holt. Free. Forever. He smiled. You finally used your full name. I earned it, she said, brushing sawdust from her skirt. It's not just mine. It's my mother's too. He took her hand, rough fingers against hers. You ever think about leaving, starting over? She shook her head. This is my start, right here. Behind them, the church bell rang again. Not for death, for life. Children laughed in the street. Women walked tall. The future had arrived quietly, but surely. As the camera pans out from Claywater, you don't see a hero in a cape. You see a woman, once owned, now unshakable. Her name stitched into the land like roots that refused to die. And as the sun set behind her, Eliza whispered one last thing. I was bought, but I was never broken. If this story moved you even a little, hit that like button. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were Eliza? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that stir the soul and stay with you forever.